over the past year, we've had so much time to think about Lamar Jackson's place within this franchise because we got to imagine what it would be like without him. And then they tag him. So there's the idea of, can a team give him that contract? And then if the Ravens don't match, they do. How is that going to work out? So just all these different timelines and all of these different possibilities kind of tumbled through your head about who he was within this team and then what they might look like without him. I always just assumed he would be back in Baltimore. It always made the most sense. And other teams thought that too. When you look back on this and history remembers this and we wonder, why didn't anyone make an offer to the Ravens or offer to Lamar Jackson and force the Ravens to match? Because everyone just thought they were going to. It was just one of those moments where we'll send you out into the market. We'll see what you can get. But they always anticipated that he'd be back, or at least that's how other teams were treating it. And now he's back. And it's in an offense that is designed to get him and this team to a new level as he's making $52 million a year. So now with all this time to consider a world without Lamar Jackson for the Ravens, now we're firmly in this world where he is everything to their success. Like what they're paying him, what he is within the construct of the Ravens, their offense, their franchise, it's everything now. So it's happened so quickly, but there have been so many important kind of linchpin moments in that discussion.
It was even when they signed Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator, it was like, well, I bet you he hopes they work out with Lamar. Can you imagine just giving up your Georgia offensive coordinator spot to go to the Ravens and they lose your franchise quarterback before you even get to call a snap? So I think like that was a moment this offseason. The tagging was a moment, and just even the negotiations that follow, teams backing out. You remember that? Remember that whole couple news cycle that happened? I think we were live when that was all happening. But I think this Ravens team that has been kind of, I would say, even health-less, snake-bitten. And I think Lamar's games played kind of reflects that. Yeah. I think this is like a regrouping offseason. Okay, Lamar's our guy. We no more question mark, no more discussions about the contract. Okay, the Greg Roman kind of thing is gone now. Whether Todd Monken's better or for worse, we will decide. We will see. But at least it's kind of like, okay, we can get that, maybe wash that stink out if we think there is a stink still. But I think in maybe the second half of the last season with the defense improving with the Roquan Smith trade, which we'll talk about, but I think they just really feel like, okay, all right, collect ourselves. We got back to square. We got back to even. Let's go. Let's just go and compete. Let's see what our offense.
Yeah, because even though it might be a little bit of a regroup, the moves that they've made this offseason, Odell Beckham has $11 million on the cap next year to not pay for this team.
That's it.
They're really trying to squeeze everything they can out of this roster. They just signed Devian Clowney off the street. Yep. This is a team, even with some of the things that are in transition, I think has real aspirations to be a Super Bowl contender, and justifiably so.
I was going to say, as they should.
Talent on this team. But sometimes when you have these little bits of transition and things are changing and there are all these moving parts, maybe you're not as confident that we should be making a push at the same time. They're still making a push, man. They're trying to do everything they can to squeeze what they can out of this roster. So when you think about the offense and all of the bits of change that are happening over there, what is the biggest question that you have about the Ravens offense?
What kind of dials does Todd Monken kind of turn? What tweaks does he make? What does Todd Monken put on Lamar's plate? And help Lamar find his groove again. Again, even last year under, we can make fun of Greg Roman. The run game was always a positive, obviously with Lamar, but what Greg Roman was doing in that run game. But when Lamar was healthy last year, this was a 4th in DVOA offense, 9th in success rate overall, like 9th in passing. And that's with what I've made this joke before, but very high school-ish passing concepts at times, and maybe just a little too much leeway. I think Monken brings this kind of balance of, I think he can do the QB run game. The rest of the coaching staff isn't new. It's not like, those ideas
almost
don't
everyone
go away.
Is the same. They kept so much of the infrastructure that was already in place there. I think that's really telling.
So none of that, like those ideas just don't go away. It's not like all of a sudden that just leaves with Greg Roman. And Monken has experience, and I mentioned this before, with Stetson Bennett, where he used his legs in the run game in a very creative way, and maybe can provide some tweaks that he's seen in the college game at the pro level. But what he's going to do is modernize the passing attack. What he leans into, whether it's RPOs, play action, I do think whatever he does lean into, he has a huge menu. Monken has had experience with Oklahoma State offenses back in the day when it was the very RPO heavy type of offense. They were doing draw stuff. Like that was really cool at the time. But then all of a sudden he made Brandon Whedon a freaking first round pick. Come on, guys. Like that's what that offense was doing to the Bucks with Dirk Cutter, like to all those types of things, to the Georgia offense the last couple of years, which was kind of a mix of college QB run concepts with pro passing concepts. And
which, by the way, sign me up.
Right.
Sign me up for exactly that.
And just a run game with the running backs that just like he knows how to use running backs in a creative way. Like he knows how to use his guys. So I'm very optimistic and very bullish. This was a top 10 offense for me. And I just think what the idea of it, I've already seen it in practice. I got to see it in practice again in the NFL, but I think Monkey could do this. And I think Lamar is motivated and it's going to be fun. I really do think it is.
The last time we saw Todd Monken call plays in the NFL, it was a blast. He was calling it for those Bucks teams. They were just airing the shit out of the ball. They were really efficient. Ryan Fitzpatrick played really well when he was the quarterback there. It was a fun group. My question is going to be, how big are the transitions? Like how sweeping are the changes? The Ravens used 11 personnel on 11.6% of their plays last season. No other team in the league was below 33%. Playing a different sport. The league average was 61%, and they were at 11.6. So what does that change look like? How far? Well, so they used 22 personnel on 35% of their snaps.
Do you have the 12 personnel rates off top right there?
No, it was it was like fairly close to league average.
Yeah, right.
So,
okay.
So the 22 is where they were an outlier. They used it on 35% of their snaps. Only one other team in the league was above 10%. The league average was 3%. So they used it 10 times as often as league average.
Okay, here we go. So they went 12 personnel. They're seventh most. So 22%. So
that's at seventh most. And then all the 21 and 22 that they ran. So it's just an entirely different end of the spectrum. So what does this look like? Their preseason opener, they were in 11 personnel. That was their dominant personnel package when they came out. And I was looking at this because I was curious. What has Lamar done in 11 personnel in his career? Is some of because the crazy efficiency numbers that he had in his MVP season, I was wondering, is that really driven by heavier personnel and throwing it out of that? Yeah. So he's actually been decidedly above average in EPA per dropback out of 11 personnel among all quarterbacks with at least 500 attempts since 2019. He ranks 13th. Okay. Most of the guys ahead of him are the superstar quarterbacks in the league. So he's very decidedly above average among that group. So when he's been asked to play that way, it's not like he's floundered. He has a better touchdown rate out of 11 personnel since 2019 than Patrick Mahomes. So he has been an above average passer in those situations. So if you can blend this quarterback run stuff with more 11, 12 traditional personnel, traditional passing concepts, it makes for a really interesting combination. And my question is going to be, does the run game really suffer? Like, do you get this huge trade-off with your rushing efficiency? And I don't think you have to. We've seen teams, the Eagles specifically, been able to use this quarterback-centric run game out of 11 personnel and out of the gun. And even if you can't do all the crazy shit that you could with Ricard and heavier personnel, they were a nightmare to prepare for. Like, defenses just hate playing against them because of how much of a pain in the ass it was. So you lose some things. But the compromise is, the Eagles' run game was incredible last year. They faced 8-man boxes at the 11th highest rate in the NFL, despite how good their running game was, because they were in light personnel all the time. So can the Ravens get some lighter boxes to run into, even if they don't have the advantages of this heavy personnel run game?
Some of those Lamar's highlights have been when they're spread out, 11 personnel, and what the concept is called GT counter. It's where the guard tackle both pull. He's reading a guy, so it's like a jet sweep or a running back moving across him, and then he reads it, and then he keeps it, and he has all this space. It's the NBA player, like all of a sudden going from college to the NBA, got all the space in the paint to drive the ball. And also, not only that, I think also when we're talking about passing game, you're talking about the run game right here, but passing game wise is the routes that his receivers are best at, and even Mark Andrews, are really the routes that Lamar has always been best at, that they haven't really truly leaned to outside of Mark Andrews. And I mean, slants, OBJ and slants are, sorry, I was
like peanut butter and jelly. It's a classic combination.
I was thinking the Forrest Gump line, like peas and carrots. It's but like the over routes, Mark Andrews is great at over routes. OBJ is great at slant routes. So is Rashad Bateman. So is Zay Flowers. And also they're great at dig routes. All those guys are good at digs in breakers. So I was curious. I was like, is Lamar good at those, or is it just in my head? Like, it's just a couple highlights that I've really lived off. Spoilers, it's not in my head. It's all those routes get guys on the move. Todd Monken is great at that. There's so many Brock Bowers highlights, who's a tight end coming out next year. That's him catching crossers and running for a touchdown. So Lamar since 2019 on in-breaking routes, so slants, crossers, over routes, and digs, he has the same EPA per dropback on those types of throws as Mahomes.
Yeah.
So he is.
It's not surprising at all. Just you imagine it in your mind. Aesthetically, it makes total sense.
He sits back there and he lets that thing rip, and he loves throwing the inbreakers. It's what he does best. So, and also that's what Monk likes to have those yak, the yards after catch. And those are the best routes for it. And they have receivers that's what they're all live off of. So I don't know, this combination really is like the menu of plays I think Monken could get to. I just think it's going to be a real positive formula. And there might be some growing pains, but this is why I'm optimistic about it. I think it's just they all mix together.
Personnel, some questions. They have a 6th-round rookie potentially starting at left tackle. Mulai Sala, Amu Vaila, Ulu.
Sweet. Nice.
That's what I'm going with. I think that's right. So that's one question. They lose Ben Powers in free agency.
Yeah.
But offensive line health hopefully will be better. Ronnie Stanley finally coming into a season healthy, which is so exciting. I can't wait to see him hopefully for 17 games. He missed the first chunk of the season last year. They've got some good pieces elsewhere with Linderbaum, and he's a really good player. And so I think that group overall, I think you still feel pretty decent about, even with a rookie potentially starting. The receivers are so much better. And we talk about the transition they'll have with the personnel. Here is what I come back to. And we've talked about this a couple different times. In theory, this change is supposed to take this offense to a new level. It's supposed to raise the ceiling for what they can be as a passing game, as an offense, and for Lamar as a quarterback. Maybe there just isn't that new level to reach. Maybe this is all theoretical. And even as you give him better chances to succeed in a more traditional drop back passing world, he just can't hit that level. He's not that type of player. I don't think that's the case, but I think that it's important to mention that possibility before we just anoint this as the next great offense in the NFL.
It is. It's just that, I mean, it was bad. I just like,
I don't disagree with you, but we do this too quickly sometimes.
Yeah,
where we just think, if you change this aspect of it, it's just going to be guns blazing forever now.
But every situation is different, and that's why I just think it was just that he was positive in what was such like, it wasn't like he's ever been bad at it. He's been good at it. It's just that maybe it just hasn't been the full season because of injuries to him or his teammates. And I just think Roman never really helped him get out of that. So that's why I get it. It is easy to just go, oh, X plus Y. Yeah. Now we got profit. I think this time it's that there's just a lot of signs that this is going to be a positive change, because it couldn't get any worse. That's really where I'm at. Even if it was a successful offense, that it was just so basic and so bad, and it was not conducive to what Lamar was good at all the time.
I've said this before. I cannot wait to watch them.
Yeah.
It is the unit I'm probably most excited to watch just because of all of the changes that are going to be out there on the field. But we have to acknowledge that it might not work. We have to acknowledge that it might not actually work.
Big disclaimer. Have to. Like, you just have to. It just might not work. Better, but it might not work.
Oh, it better. I mean, based on everything that they've invested, it fucking better.
Yes.
Biggest question about the Ravens defense for you?
Who steps up as a pass rusher? I think that I know they signed Clowney, but I'll get to him in a sec. But this team was dead last in knockdowns per dropback as a team last year. And the only player in their entire team that had better than average pressure rate, usually averages about 10%, was Justin Houston. He's not there anymore. He's in Carolina. Odafe Owe finished right about league average, but he's a guy that needs to see improvement from. He's had flashes, but just more consistent.
Still really young.
So
young. You hope that he can keep coming along.
Even as a pro, everyone knew it was that line, the 2 years away from being 2 years away.
Sacks in college.
None. It was just pure tools. That's what you're betting on. He was 2 years away from being 2 years away. And so you saw flashes though last year. It's slowing down from a little bit. So maybe we get a little more something out of him this year, but can he do something? Clowney has been more of a pocket pusher and a run first guy. They kind of have a lot of that Justin Metabuke, who I've been like, come on, you're going to break out. He's more just like a nice, solid piece. Travis Jones is someone I'm high on, but they need someone to step up and get pressure and get sacks. They need to affect the quarterback because while there's other things I really like a lot of these players. It's just they need to get these tangible results, some pressures and sacks, and that's going to be a question mark till proven otherwise, really.
The Ravens for years were one of those teams that manufactured pass rush. Even if they
Right.
didn't have a dominant pass rusher, they were going to send enough bodies at the problem that they were going to figure it out. Those days are gone. That's
Mhm.
not the Ravens anymore. They had a below average blitz rate on third down last season. From 2019 through 2021, Wink Martindale's last 3 years there, they blitzed on more than half of third down snaps. More than half.
Like Texas Tech, probably college football fans just know one offense, like they were living with the air raid, like Ravens NFL fans, like their defenses going back to like the old early 2000s teams. It's
for
like
so long,
just so much heat. They're like, why aren't you blitzing? Like, what is this? Like, I think that's just what they're used to. It's like,
and that's what this is now. And it's much more sound. And I think is reflective of very modern NFL ideas on defense.
Yeah.
During this trip that I've been on, Mike McDonald, their defensive coordinator, has come up several different times talking to opposing coaches and executives about guys that are just really good. And he's gotten very high reviews from people that he has to play against and from people who are in the market to hire coaches and such. I think that his star will rise by the end of this season. He has a very high Q rating around the NFL, I guess is what I would say.
Man,
and
just
so,
look what he was doing against the Bengals late in the year. That's like,
and so that's also worth bringing up maybe about the Bengals.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the problem that they haven't been able to solve, but we'll have that conversation another time when those teams play against each other.
Yeah.
So, but they don't really do that kind of stuff anymore. It was a lot of a lot more quarters, a lot more too high coverages, a lot of simulated pressures, but not a lot of pressure. So they need guys who can more traditionally affect the quarterback. The one name you didn't mention, David Ojabo, is now in his second year. He only played a couple games last year. So they need those young guys that they've drafted to step up. So the pass rushers, I think, is a totally reasonable question. I'm worried about the secondary. The health in the secondary is a real question. Marlon Humphrey just had foot surgery. He's expected to miss a few weeks. They signed Ronald Darby off the street. He's coming off of a torn ACL. Even the guys who were already there, Rocky Sin had missed a couple weeks of practice with a knee injury. Arthur Millette, who they signed presumably to be their nickel corner from the Steelers, he has a hamstring injury right now. So how does that shake out on the back end? Because they were really good on defense last year. You had Chuck Clark and Marcus Williams playing safety. You had Kyle Hamilton playing nickel. And then when Marcus Peters got back, you had Marlon Humphrey and Marcus Peters on the outside. Everything is now in flux because Kyle Hamilton's moving back to safety. So now with some of these guys hurt, is Geno Stone at safety and Kyle Hamilton at the nickel better as an option than some of these other things that you could try? So the back end just seems very unsettled to me, especially compared to some of these other years where they haven't been devastated by injury. There have been some years where you name a Ravens corner, but when they've been good, that has been a strength for them. So where does that all kind of shake out, I think, is a big question.
Yeah, no, and mentioning the Kyle Hamilton thing, moving from slot back to deep, and I almost wanted to say the post, but to deep to the to the quarters safety shell, is at first I've come around on it. At first I was like, man, he was a plus player in the slot. He was really getting, it's really making sense for him because he's a versatile player. He's very smart. He's very aware. And then I kind of came around on it because him on the back end, they can get creative and use him to manipulate what they want to do in different ways rather than just have him in the slot and have him moving from those spots. He can come down into the box. He can still come down as an overhang player between the receiver and the offensive tackle. He can come down as a robber. He can be in the post. But I actually like that a little bit as a way to kind of like, hey, let's just use this guy who he was a first round pick. Use this guy as a true blue chipper that can change the math and be that queen on the chessboard that he was drafted to be. So I came around on that, but totally with you, because when I got into this exercise, I started looking at the DB room. I'm like, man, that's right. Rocky Sin's there. It's like, you kind of just get reminded of who they have.
It makes sense. It's like we just need they signed him in like June, which is their typical Ravens move. He's going to come in. He's been a reliable player. That's what we want. They're very good at plugging holes in some of these spots with affordable veterans. It's kind of their MO on defense and has been for a while. But now we're taking Jenga blocks out.
Yeah,
because these guys keep getting hurt, and that's starting to worry me a little bit. So if they can get back to relatively full health, but Marlon Humphrey is an excellent player.
very good.
He's like one of the best corners in the league.
Yeah.
So having him miss any sort of time when everything else feels a little unsettled, there's just like an alarm bell going off for me. I'm worried about it.
This team was dead last in health like in 2021, like historic, like one of the worst devastated.
That's probably the year I'm thinking
lost.
about.
And
Name
then
me a corner.
And then 2022, last year, they're 25th. They improved from 32nd to 25th. It's like, and they're already like getting banged up already. It's like, man, what's in the water in Baltimore?
The last thing I wanted to mention, this team just was different after the Roquan trade last year. So with Roquan Smith on the field last season, the Ravens were tied with the Patriots for the best EPA per play in the league on defense after he got there. And you go watch that Bengals game, and it makes perfect sense.
Total difference.
What they ask him to do in the middle of that defense, because they leave so much space and so much air in the defense with the way that they play some of these zone coverages.
Yep.
He's just in an ocean by himself because they're using Patrick Queen as a blitzer often in those looks.
Yep.
And he can hold up in those spots. Like his ability to work in that space and then also be a blitzer, and just he fits what they want to be so perfectly. And he's just a beautiful little skeleton key that kind of unlocked the style of defense that they wanted to play last season.
Yeah, he made Patrick Queen playable because Patrick Queen was a lot of traits, but was not going in the right direction. He was, dog chasing cars sometimes, and Roquan kind of really settled him in. It's just like it's Devin White and Levante.
It's a
Levante
great
David.
comparison.
It's the exact same kind
we're
of
gonna
duo.
just let you do what you do well. You go do it.
Run and hit, get that guy. Go. And then Roquan can do like you said, he does everything well. Blitzes, coverage, stops the run, but he just calms everyone. Like we say about that centers with the offensive line, this is a classic linebacker that's the keystone. And oh man, like it's great because it's the classic eye test, stats, the on-off stuff, their success rate where they're like you said, they're up there with the Patriots, they're like top 4 and everything. So it was really cool to see the effect they had, and then the defense coordinator realizing, oh, we can do this now. Now we got a whole offseason what they can do with him.
The Bengals were taking advantage of teams underneath that were leaving all of that space against them. And they were saying, all right, we're going to throw the ball to the running back, and he's going to be able to make a linebacker miss one-on-one.
Yep.
That's not a plus matchup when you're playing against this version of the Ravens. So Roquan throws a wrench into that typical plan that the Bengals would have against all of these other defenses. So he just allows them to do so much stuff. I mean, obviously his career in Chicago and the way that it ended, there was just a lot going on there. You're moving between regimes and it can get a little messy, but seeing him kind of get to live the best version and be the best version of himself in Baltimore is a very cool football story.
Everybody won.
X factor for the Baltimore Ravens. What do you got for me?
I have Todd Monken and his relationship with Lamar and his offense.
There's nothing else you can pick.
All you can say.
Yeah. How this works, this experiment, whatever, this transition, that is easily the most important part of this Ravens season.
Yeah. I just want to see what equation he comes up with. I want to see what it is.
Cannot wait to watch it.
Yeah.
Truly the unit I am most excited to watch when the season starts, just because even though the Chargers with Kellen Moore, like I think it's going to be exciting, I still would understand what it's going to look like. The Ravens with Lamar and Todd Monken, no clue. They play tonight, but I still don't think we'll get many indications during the preseason of what it'll actually be. Nope. So very excited to watch that. Breakout candidate for the Baltimore Ravens. Who do you got for me?
Man, it's like I want to name like a second-year defender they have, like Travis Jones, David Ojabo, you said Kyle Hamilton, but I'm going on their offense second-year player, Tyler Linderbaum, their first-round pick last year. He's a second-year center. Really came into his own last year as a kind of, okay, this is the NFL. He got a little Quentin Williams experience, and I think week 2, or it might have been week 1. That really will open your eyes to NFL strength. But
it was week 1 because that was the Joe Flacco returns to Baltimore game.
That's right. Yeah. And Lamar in that game was fantastic. But incredibly athletic. He is can pull. He can move. Great on screens. He's smart, tough. It's not a crazy bold take, but my kind of hottish take would be that he's going to be a Pro Bowler this year. Just also looking at who the AFC centers are. That's another reason I feel okay about making this take. But really, I think with this offensive shift, even more variety in the run game, but him as a puller can be a true weapon. And I think this offense will
looking for ideas. Jason Kelsey.
If
you're going to play like Eagles, this, those Eagles 11 personnel shotgun-based runs, you can easily steal a lot of those ideas, and I'm sure that they've been looking at some of them. Mine is Zay Flowers. I
You love
really like Zay
Flowers, man.
Flowers.
You love him.
I
He's
really
fun.
like Zay Flowers. When I was watching him before the draft, I just thought he had so much to his game. Obviously undersized, but not just a slot player, in my opinion. I think
Pretty
that he can do a
strong.
little bit of everything.
Yeah.
He's strong. You get the ball in his hands and he can do stuff after the catch. Another guy that, talking to coaches as I've gone through this, there were a lot of coaches that weren't in a position to draft Zay Flowers. They're like, I really liked Zay Flowers. Yeah. So I think he's somebody that was kind of an eye of the beholder prospect. Some people are just going to see an undersized guy that can only affect the game in so many ways. I saw somebody that I think can transcend some of that. And in this offense, OBJ is a little bit older. Rashad Bateman struggled to stay healthy. Obviously, Mark Andrews is Mark Andrews, but he's got an opportunity to be a huge part of their passing game.
Yes.
And I think that he has the talent to realize that. I think he has a chance to be a really good player.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to be, if they do spread it out to 11, these guys are going to be on islands. And if Bateman's healthy, and Andrews is out there, that's 4 dudes that are tough to guard on islands. And that
it's really important to mention the uptick in receiver depth that they have and the change in receiver personnel, even beyond the structural stuff, going from 22 to 11, the players that they're going to have in 11 personnel. This was nothing. Demarcus Robinson was like their number 1 receiver last year after Bateman got hurt. Now Nelson Aguilar is the 5th best receiver.
Right.
That change is hugely important. Yes. So beyond Todd Monken, we're going to get to that place in week 10 when they're scoring all these points, but Todd Monken did all of this. And we're not going to talk about the fact that their best receiver last year was Demarcus Robinson. So the uptick in talent, which we'll talk about with this next team as well in a specific area of their roster, will tend to matter in some of these spots.
Jimmy's and Joe's do matter.
What is success for the Baltimore Ravens this season?
Man, this actually was pretty tough for me to answer.
It's not easy. I also struggle with it a little bit.
But I said winning the division, but I also said but making the playoffs in this AFC is a good season. But I said making the playoffs and winning a playoff game. I think that's a good goal
exactly
for this
what
team.
I said.
Yeah, that's what this team feels like, though. I don't know. This one was kind of tough for me to answer because you could answer in so many different ways. And I'd be okay with it.
I think winning a playoff game speaks to being success, speaks to the urgency that they have, but it's not like this is a one and done thing. This is a new version of them with this. So I think that they want to win, but if they don't win at all this year, it's not like all is lost.
And I think maybe like another goal would be like, okay, cementing what this offense is with Lamar.
That's exactly right. And that was what I was going to say. That's exactly the point that I was about to make, is that you want proof of concept with the offense by the end of the season. So winning a playoff game, plus this was the right decision. Correct. Our plan for what this offense could give us, it has given us that.
That was the proper pivot.
If you can, if that can be the conclusion at the end of this, I think you're going to feel really good if you're the Ravens.
I think so too. I think that's a good way to put it.